She wasn't supposed to remember him. The Mafia boss who carried her out of that alley was the kind of man people pretended to forget. But when she showed up the next morning bandaged, unshaken, and whispering his name like a secret, Franco realized mercy had just made him vulnerable. And in San Verona, that's how legends die. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. Francisco Franco Sanchez never responded to chaos personally. His empire, El Corazón Rojo, ran on discipline and delegation, two principles that had kept him alive in San Verona's underworld for the past decade. But that Friday night, as he reviewed territory reports in his glass office overlooking the neon-drenched dance floor, something felt wrong. The scream from the back alley cut through the baseline like a blade. Franco's phone buzzed. Dante. Situation outside. 2 men. One of ours caught in middle. He should have typed back, "Handle it." Instead, his fingers hovered over the screen as another sound pierced the night, not a scream this time, but a plea, desperate, feminine, familiar in a way he couldn't place. "Clear the back cameras," Franco said into his phone, already moving, "and bring the car around. Boss, we don't even know." Now, he moved through the private corridors, his tailored suit catching the red emergency lighting, tattoos visible at his collar where he'd loosened his tie. Through the reinforced glass of the back door, he saw them, 2 men with rival syndicate ink circling someone small and cornered. Franco pushed the door open. The alley crystallized under the flickering sign Sofia Moretti, pinned against brick, her white uniform soaked crimson with spilled wine. Glass glittered at her feet like diamonds. She'd worked his floor for 3 years, always efficient, always invisible. The waitress who somehow served his table every Friday without ever meeting his eyes. Now she couldn't look away. "She owes money," one man said, his confidence crumbling when he recognized Franco. "Her brother's debt. We're just in my alley, touching my employee, bleeding on my property." Franco's voice was ice. "You thought this was smart?" The second man reached for his jacket. Franco's guards materialized from the shadows, 3 ghosts who'd been waiting for his signal. The confrontation lasted 30 seconds. The collectors fled with broken fingers and a message for their boss. Sofia's knees buckled. Franco caught her, his arms sliding under her legs as her weight collapsed against his chest. The wine stain bled into his jacket. She was still clutching something, a broken wine glass stem gripped so tightly it had cut her palm. "I'm sorry," she whispered, mascara streaking down her face. "The debt. My brother. I didn't mean to bring trouble. Look at me." Her eyes opened. Dark brown, drowning in shame and terror and something else he couldn't name. Something that looked like relief. "You didn't bring trouble," Franco said, his voice softer than he'd intended. "Trouble found you." He should have called someone else. Should have maintained distance, avoided complications. Every instinct he'd honed over years of survival screamed at him to put her down, delegate, disappear back into his office where bosses belonged. Instead, he adjusted his grip and carried her toward his car. Dante stood by the open door, his expression carefully neutral. "Hospital, boss?" Franco looked down at the woman in his arms, trembling, wine-stained, still apologizing in broken whispers. He thought of the 100 times she'd refilled his whiskey glass without a word, the way she'd mastered invisibility in a room full of predators, how she'd never once asked him for anything. "The penthouse," he heard himself say. Dante's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Boss, question me again, and you'll join those collectors in the emergency room." The drive was silent except for Sofia's shallow breathing. Franco stared out at San Verona's skyline, the city he'd conquered through calculated violence and strategic ruthlessness. A city where mercy was weakness and compassion was suicide. Yet here he sat, holding a waitress who'd somehow become his responsibility in the span of 3 minutes. When they pulled into his private garage beneath the penthouse tower, Sofia stirred against his chest. "Why?" she whispered. Franco looked down at her, at the way the underground lighting caught the wine stains on white fabric, the broken glass still in her hand, the mascara streaks that somehow made her more real than anyone he'd seen in years. "Is greater than, because I don't like seeing things that are mine get hurt." The words came out harder than he'd intended, colder. But as he carried her into the elevator that led to the home no one else entered, Franco realized something that terrified him more than any rival gang ever had. He wasn't sure if he was lying. If you're the kind of person who would have walked away and said, "It's not my problem," then maybe that's why stories like this hit harder. Subscribe before life reminds you how silence can cost a soul. Sophia woke to sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. The San Verona skyline spread before her like a postcard she couldn't afford to buy. Her head pounded. Her mouth tasted like wine and regret. For 3 confused seconds, she thought she'd died and gone somewhere beautiful. Then she saw him. Franco sat across the room in a leather chair, his jacket discarded, tattoos snaking up his forearms and disappearing beneath rolled sleeves. A glass of whiskey sat untouched on the table beside him. He wasn't looking at his phone or reading reports. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're awake," he said quietly. Sophia pushed herself up, the silk sheets foreign against her skin. She was still in her uniform, cleaned somehow. The wine stains vanished like they'd never existed. Someone had removed her shoes, placed water and aspirin on the nightstand, covered her with a blanket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Why did you help me?" The words came out hoarse. Franco's jaw tightened. "Because I don't like seeing things that are mine get hurt. Things that are mine." The words should have stung. Should have made her feel like property, like another asset in his empire of blood and power. Instead, she saw his knuckles bruised and split from the fight. Saw the way his eyes kept drifting to her bandaged palm where she'd clutched that broken glass. "I'm not yours," Sophia said softly. "I just work for you. That makes you mine." His voice was cold steel, but something flickered behind his eyes. "In this city, that's the only thing keeping you alive." She should have been afraid. Should have thanked him politely and asked to leave before she caused more trouble. That's what the smart version of Sophia would do, the one who'd spent 3 years perfecting invisibility, who'd learned to serve whiskey without trembling when men discussed murder like it was weather. Instead, she met his gaze directly. "Thank you for coming back for me." Franco went very still. "What?" "Thank you." Sophia pushed the blanket aside, her bare feet touching marble floors that were probably heated. "You could have sent your men. Could have ignored it completely. But you came yourself. You carried me." Her voice cracked. "You stayed." Most people who crossed Franco's path tried to forget his humanity, pretended the moments of mercy were strategic calculations, nothing more. It was safer that way, easier to maintain the distance between monster and man. Sophia refused to pretend. "You don't know what you're talking about," Franco said, but his voice had lost its edge. "I protected an investment. That's all." "Then why are you still sitting there?" Sophia asked. "Why didn't you leave once you knew I was breathing?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, the city woke car horns, distant sirens, the rhythm of a world that kept spinning regardless of who lived or died in its alleys. Franco stood abruptly, crossing to the window with his back to her. "Your brother's debt," he said. "Luca Moretti. How much does he owe?" Sophia's stomach dropped. I don't know the exact amount. He won't tell me. But the men said, the men who touched you weren't working for me." Franco's reflection in the glass was dark and dangerous. "They were using my name to extort people for side money. That's going to stop." "I can pay it back," Sophia said quickly, desperately. "Whatever he owes, I'll work it off. Extra shifts, You'll do nothing." Franco turned, and the look on his face made her breath stop. "You'll go home. You'll forget last night happened. And you'll never mention this to anyone. Understood?" But Sophia shook her head, standing on unsteady legs. "No. Excuse me. I won't forget." Her voice strengthened as she moved toward him. "I won't pretend I didn't see you break pattern for someone like me. I won't act like you're just the monster everyone says you are." She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the war in his eyes. "You saved me, Franco. And I remember everything." The words hung between them like a confession. Franco stared at her, this slip of a woman in a cleaned uniform, with mascara-smudged eyes and a bandaged hand, refusing to let him hide behind his reputation. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said quietly, "or the most foolish." Sophia smiled despite everything. Maybe both. For the first time in 10 years, Francisco Sanchez didn't know what to say. Franco didn't sleep that night. After Dante drove Sophia home to her cramped apartment in the South Side, the neighborhood his organization technically owned but never actually protected, he returned to his office and did something he hadn't done in years, questioned his own records. By dawn, he'd found the rot. "Marco Silva," Franco said when his lieutenant arrived Monday morning, dropping a folder on the desk between them. "Tell me about the Moretti account." Marco's face remained carefully blank. "Small debt. Brother gambled. Couldn't pay. Standard collection protocol." "Standard protocol doesn't involve threatening waitresses in my alley." Franco leaned back, his tattooed fingers steepled. Standard protocol doesn't include interest rates that quadruple every month. And standard protocol sure as hell doesn't mean using my name to bleed people dry for your side business. The color drained from Marco's face. Boss, I can explain. You have 30 seconds. Marco stumbled through. Excuses, the Morettis were nobodies. Luca was a degenerate. Sofia was collateral damage in a bigger game. With each word, Franco felt something cold and precise settle over him. This was the side of himself he knew best. The calculator, the enforcer, the man who'd built an empire on making examples. Then he remembered Sofia's voice. You're not just the monster everyone says you are. Get out, Franco said quietly. Marco blinked. What? You're out of the organization. You have 24 hours to leave San Verona. If I see you again. Franco's voice dropped to a whisper that made Marco's hands shake. I won't be this generous. Boss, please, I have family. Then you should have thought about them before you corrupted my name. Franco stood, and Marco scrambled backward. And Marco? If anything happens to the Morettis, if Luca gets so much as a threatening phone call, I'll assume it came from you. Do you understand what that means? Marco understood. He fled. Dante, who'd been standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. You let him live. I know. Because of the waitress. Franco's jaw tightened. Because he betrayed the organization, that's all. Right. Dante's tone was carefully neutral. So what happens now? Word's going to spread that you went soft on. The door burst open. Sofia Moretti stood in the entrance, chest heaving like she'd run the entire way from the employee entrance. Her waitress uniform was crisp and perfect, but her eyes blazed with something Franco had never seen before, fury mixed with determination. I need to speak with you, she said. Dante moved to intercept her. Miss, you can't just... Let her in, Franco said. The office door closed behind her with a soft click. Sofia crossed the room with quick, angry steps, stopping directly in front of his desk. She didn't sit, didn't ask permission, just stood there, trembling with an emotion Franco couldn't quite name. You canceled my brother's debt, she said. I did. And you fired the man who was extorting us. I did. Without telling me, without asking me. Her voice cracked, like I'm some charity case who can't handle the truth. Franco studied her, this woman who'd spent 3 years invisible and was now standing in his office demanding answers. I solved a problem. That's what I do. No. Sofia slammed her hands on his desk, and Franco actually flinched at the sound. What you did was take away my choice. My brother's debt was my burden, my responsibility, and you just erased it. Like I'm something fragile that needs protecting. You are something that needs protecting, Franco said, standing to match her height. You were attacked because of my organization's corruption. I fixed it. I don't want to be fixed. The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. I want to earn my way out. I want to stand on my own. I want... Her voice broke. I want to repay you properly, not as someone you rescued, as someone who can hold their own. The silence that followed was electric. Franco came around the desk slowly, stopping close enough to see the unshed tears in her eyes, the way her hands were balled into fists, the proud tilt of her chin even as everything in her threatened to crumble. You want to work for me? He asked quietly. Yes. In what capacity? Sofia's chin lifted higher. However you'll have me. I'll work double shifts. I'll be my personal assistant. She blinked. What? You said you wanted to earn your way. Franco's voice was soft, dangerous. So earn it. Work directly for me. Handle my schedules, my meetings, my business. Prove you can survive in my world. It was a test. They both knew it. Sofia extended her hand. Deal. When Franco took it, her palm was still bandaged from the broken glass, but her grip was steady, and for the first time in his life, Francisco Sanchez wondered if he'd just made the smartest decision of his life or signed his own death warrant. If you've ever said, I'd never forget who saved me, then prove it, hit subscribe, because forgetting good deeds is how villains are made, not heroes. Sofia's first week as Franco's personal assistant was a masterclass in controlled chaos. She learned that his empire ran on 3 things: fear, precision, and secrets kept in leather-bound ledgers she wasn't supposed to read but somehow always needed. By Friday, she'd stopped flinching when men with guns entered his office. By Monday, she'd memorized which whiskey he preferred for business versus bloodshed. By Wednesday, she understood why people crossed the street when they saw him coming. But it was Thursday night when everything changed. Marco Silva was spotted in the Port District, Dante reported, his voice tight with barely contained rage. He's been talking, saying you've gone soft, that the organization is weak under your recent decisions. Franco's expression didn't change, but Sophia felt the temperature in the office drop 10 degrees. She was supposed to be filing contracts in the corner, invisible as always. Instead, she found herself frozen, watching. "Bring him to the warehouse," Franco said quietly, standing and buttoning his jacket. "I'll handle this personally." "Boss, if I may, this is exactly what he wants. He's baiting you to—" "I said I'll handle it." Franco's voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Tonight." Sophia should have stayed silent, should have kept filing papers and pretended she hadn't heard. But the image of Marco's terrified face from days ago flashed through her mind, a man given mercy, now about to receive something far worse. "Can I come with you?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Both men turned to stare at her. "Excuse me?" Franco's tone was dangerous. Sophia set down the files, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "You said I'm your assistant, that I need to understand your world, so let me see it." "This isn't a board meeting, Miss Moretti," Dante said sharply. "This is business," Sophia interrupted. "Isn't that what you call it? Just business?" Franco studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching for something she didn't know how to give. Finally, he nodded once. "Get your coat." The warehouse was exactly what she'd imagined and nothing like she'd expected. Cold concrete, harsh fluorescent lights, and Marco Silva chained to a chair in the center of an empty space. Blood already stained his shirt from wherever Dante's men had found him. Sophia stood in the shadows near the entrance while Franco walked forward, his footsteps echoing like a countdown. "You were given a gift," Franco said conversationally, circling Marco like a shark. 24 hours. A clean exit. Most men would have taken that and disappeared into whatever hole they crawled from. "I have every right to," Marco started. Franco's fist connected with his jaw before he could finish. The sound cracked through the warehouse. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. "You have no rights," Franco said softly, shaking out his hand. "You stole from me. You used my name to torture innocent people. You corrupted everything this organization stands for. Since when do you care about innocent people?" Marco spat blood. "Since when does the great Francisco Sanchez give a damn about some waitress and her—" Another hit. Harder this time. Marco's head snapped back. Franco leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper Sophia could barely hear. "Say her name again." "I dare you." This was the man the city feared. The ghost in a tailored suit who'd built an empire on calculated violence. Sophia watched him work, each blow precise, controlled, designed to send a message that would echo through San Verona's underworld. She should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself stepping forward. "Franco." Her voice cut through the sound of Marco's whimpering. "Stop." Franco froze mid-motion, his fist raised. Slowly, he turned to look at her. "He's done," Sophia said, moving closer despite every instinct screaming at her to run. "You've made your point. The whole city will know by morning. But this—" She gestured to Marco's broken form. "This isn't justice. It's just pain." "He deserves pain," Franco said flatly. "Maybe. But do you deserve to be the one giving it?" Sophia stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the blood on his knuckles, the rage burning in his eyes. "You gave him mercy once. Don't let him take that away from you now." The warehouse went silent except for Marco's ragged breathing. Dante shifted uncomfortably in the shadows. This wasn't how these things ended. Mercy interrupted by a waitress, a boss listening to anyone but his own instincts. Franco stared at Sophia for what felt like an eternity. Then, impossibly, he lowered his fist. "Get him out of San Verona," Franco told Dante, his voice rough. "Make sure he never comes back." "Boss." "Now." As Dante's men dragged Marco away, Franco walked past Sophia toward the exit. She followed, her legs trembling, her mind reeling from what she'd just done. Outside, under the harsh glow of streetlights, Franco finally spoke. "You made me look weak in front of my men." "No," Sophia said quietly. "I made you look human." Franco's laugh was bitter. "In my world, that's the same thing." But he didn't send her away. And when they drove back through the neon-lit streets in heavy silence, Sophia noticed something that made her chest tighten. Franco's hands were shaking. The elevator ride to Franco's penthouse office was suffocating. Sophia stood on one side, Franco on the other, the mirrored walls reflecting two people who'd just crossed a line neither knew how to uncross. When the doors opened, Franco walked straight to the bar and poured whiskey he didn't drink. "You shouldn't have done that," he said finally, his back to her. "Done what?" Stopped you from becoming the monster Marco said you were? Franco spun around, his eyes blazing. You think you stopped me? I let you stop me. There's a difference. He set the glass down hard enough that whiskey sloshed over the rim. Do you understand what that means? What my men are thinking right now? That you have a conscience? That I'm compromised. The word came out like poison. That Francisco Sanchez, who once had a man's entire crew eliminated for less than what Marco did, went soft because his waitress asked nicely. Sophia flinched but held her ground. Then fire me. Send me back to the floor where I belong. Pretend tonight never happened. I can't. The admission seemed to cost him something. Because you're right. And I hate that you're right. The silence stretched between them, filled with things neither knew how to say. Franco moved to the window overlooking San Verona's glittering skyline. When I was 16, I watched my mother bleed out on the floor of her restaurant because she refused to pay protection money to the Vega family. She said it was wrong, said she'd rather die honest than live compromised. His voice was hollow. So they made sure she died. And I learned that mercy is just another word for weakness in this world. Sophia's heart cracked. Franco, I spent 15 years becoming everything they feared, building power so complete that no one would ever put me in that position again. He turned to face her. And then you walk into my world, refuse to forget, refuse to be protected, refuse to let me be the monster I need to be. Do you understand how dangerous that is? For who? Sophia asked quietly. For you? Or for me? Both. She crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached him, she could see the exhaustion beneath his armor, the weight of an empire built on blood, the cost of being feared instead of known. I don't want your protection, Sophia said. I want to stand beside you, to work with you, to, she hesitated, then pushed forward. To be someone you don't have to perform for. Franco's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. Let me see all of it, the business, the decisions, the weight you carry alone. Let me prove I can handle your world without breaking. And if you can't, then you were right about mercy being weakness. Sophia held his gaze. But if I can, maybe you'll finally believe you're more than what they made you. The city lights cast shadows across Franco's face, making him look younger and infinitely older at the same time. For a long moment, he just stared at her, this woman who'd somehow slipped past every defense he'd spent a lifetime building. You start tomorrow, he said finally. 8 a.m. You'll attend meetings, review contracts, handle correspondence. You'll see exactly how this empire runs the legitimate fronts and the blood-stained truth beneath. His voice dropped. And when you realize what I really am, when you can't sleep because you've seen too much, you don't get to unsee it. Understood? Understood. You'll take an apartment in this building, 3rd floor. I'm not having my assistant commute from the south side at dawn. Franco, I can't afford. You work for me now. That makes you a target. His tone left no room for argument. You live where I can protect you, or this arrangement ends before it begins. Sophia wanted to fight it, wanted to maintain some piece of independence. But she saw the fear lurking behind his commands, the memory of his mother, the weight of every person he'd failed to save. Okay, she whispered. Franco nodded once, then moved toward his desk, the boss sliding back into place like armor. Dante will have the keys sent up. Take the weekend to move. Monday morning, your real education begins. Sophia turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. Sophia. She looked back. Franco stood silhouetted against the window. The city he'd conquered spread behind him like a kingdom of neon and shadow. You made me stop tonight. Don't expect me to stop next time. I won't, she said. But I also won't stop expecting you to be better than they think you are. As the elevator descended, Sophia's reflection stared back at her, a waitress who'd somehow become essential to a man the world called untouchable. She should have been afraid of what came next. Instead, she felt alive for the first time in 3 years. The whispers started within 48 hours. The girl the Don carried still works for him. She stopped him mid-punishment and walked out alive. He gave her an apartment in his building, the one where only blood family lived. Sophia heard them in the break room when she went to collect coffee. Saw them in the way servers at El Corazon Rojo watched her move through the club with tablets and leather folders. No longer invisible but impossible to ignore. Must be nice, a waitress named Carmen muttered as Sophia passed. Trading a uniform for a penthouse view. Sophia stopped, turned. I still clean my own apartment, still eat ramen for dinner. The only thing that changed is I now file contracts instead of serving drinks. Right, and you just happened to catch the boss's attention. I caught 2 men's fists in an alley, Sophia said quietly. Trust me, there are easier ways to get promoted. The room went silent. Carmen's expression shifted, not quite apology, but acknowledgement. That night, during Franco's regular Thursday meeting with his territory captains, Sophia sat in the corner taking notes. She'd learned to read the room, who respected Franco's decisions, who questioned them silently, who would need watching. Vincent Calabrese, captain of the port district, was doing all 3. Word on the street says the Vega family is testing our borders, Vincent said, his tone carefully neutral. They think recent changes in leadership style indicate weakness. Changes? Franco's voice was silk over steel. Marco Silva's exile instead of elimination. The loan forgiveness programs you implemented. The Vincent's eyes flicked to Sophia. The visible presence of non-operational personnel in strategic meetings. Sophia's pen stilled. She waited for Franco to defend the decision, to justify her presence. Instead, he leaned back in his chair. Sophia, tell Vincent what you discovered in last quarter's port ledgers. She blinked. This was a test for her, for Vincent, for everyone watching. Sophia stood, moved to the table, and opened her tablet. The port district reported 18% profit increase last quarter, but when I cross-referenced shipping manifests with customs declarations, I found a 6.3% discrepancy that suggests either significant inventory loss or unreported revenue streams. She met Vincent's stare. Would you like to explain which it is? Vincent's face hardened. Those numbers are accurate, Franco interrupted. Miss Moretti spent 3 days verifying them. So either you're incompetent and losing my merchandise, or you're skimming and think I won't notice. He stood slowly. Which weakness would you like to confess to? The room held its breath. Vincent's jaw worked. Finally, inventory shrinkage. I'll have a full report by Monday. You'll have it by tomorrow morning, Franco corrected. And Vincent? Miss Moretti will be conducting random audits across all territories going forward. If you have concerns about non-operational personnel, take them up with the discrepancies in your own books. After the meeting ended and the captains filtered out, Sophia finally released the breath she'd been holding. You set me up, she said. I gave you an opportunity. Franco poured 2 glasses of wine, red, expensive. Nothing like the cheap bottle that had stained her uniform weeks ago. You took it. He handed her a glass. Their fingers brushed. They think I'm sleeping with you, Sophia said quietly. I know. Does that bother you? Franco considered the question, swirling wine he wouldn't drink. They can think whatever they want, as long as they fear the consequences of acting on those thoughts. He met her eyes. But for the record, if I wanted you in my bed, I wouldn't hide it behind professional arrangements. Heat crawled up Sophia's neck. Good to know. Is it? Franco moved closer, and suddenly the office felt smaller. Because the truth is more complicated than they think, and more dangerous. What truth? That you're not here because I want to sleep with you. His voice dropped. You're here because you make me want to be the man my mother believed I could be. And that terrifies me more than any rival gang ever has. Sophia's breath caught. Franco, a knock interrupted them. Dante entered without waiting. Boss, we have a situation. The Vega family just made a move on the East Side territory. They left a message. What kind of message? Dante's expression was grim. The kind written in blood. They're calling you out specifically, saying if you've gone soft enough to keep a waitress as your right hand, maybe it's time for new leadership in San Verona. Franco's face went cold and empty, the mask sliding back into place. But Sophia saw his hand tighten around the wine glass, saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Gather the captains, he said quietly. All of them. Tonight. As Dante left, Franco finally looked at Sophia. This is what I meant. You're not just working for me anymore. You're a symbol. And symbols either inspire loyalty or become targets, Sophia finished. Yes, she should have been terrified, should have asked for protection, for distance, for anything that would make her less visible in a war she hadn't asked to join. Instead, Sophia raised her wine glass. Then let's make sure they know what kind of symbol I am. Franco stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled, small, genuine, and more dangerous than any threat. To second chances, he said, clinking his glass against hers. To second chances, Sophia echoed. Neither of them drank. But the promise hung between them like a vow. The war for San Verona had just begun. One day, you'll wish you'd supported something pure when you had the chance. Don't wait until the story ends to realize you were part of it. Subscribe now. The storm hit San Verona on a Tuesday night, the kind that turned streets into rivers and made even the bravest stay inside. Franco had called an early close for El Corazon Rojo after the Vega family's threat, though he'd never admit it was caution instead of strategy. Sofia was supposed to leave at 6. It was nearly 11 when Franco found her in his private library. Still awake, surrounded by territorial maps and logistics reports. She'd fallen asleep in the leather chair by the window, her shift dress still damp from closing the bar early, rain-soaked hair falling across her face. Thunder rattled the windows. Lightning cast shadows across her features. Franco stood in the doorway watching her, this woman who'd inserted herself into his war without hesitation, who reviewed contracts until midnight like lives depended on it. Because they did. He should have woken her, sent her to her apartment 3 floors down, maintained the distance that was already too small. Instead, he crossed the room and draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Franco? It's late. You should have gone home hours ago. This is important." Sofia gestured to the maps. "If the Vega family hits the east side, they'll cut off 3 of our supply routes, and..." She stopped, seeing his expression. "What? Why do you keep saying our?" Franco asked quietly. "These aren't your territories. This isn't your war. You made it my war when you made me your assistant." Sofia sat up, his jacket sliding from her shoulders. "When you let me see how this empire really works. When you..." Her voice caught. "When you trusted me with the truth." Franco moved to the window, watching rain blur the city lights into abstract art. "My mother used to say that. Our restaurant, our neighborhood, our responsibility, like claiming ownership could protect something from being destroyed." "The woman in the photograph," Sofia said softly. He turned. "How did you..." "I saw it. In your study. The way you look at it sometimes when you think no one's watching." She stood, moving closer. "Who was she?" For a long moment, Franco said nothing. Then, "Maria Sanchez. She ran a small Italian restaurant in the north side before it became valuable territory. Before the Vega family decided she was an obstacle." Thunder rolled across the sky. "They came to her 3 times, offered protection money which really meant extortion. Each time she refused, said she'd rather close than compromise." Franco's voice was hollow, distant. "The 4th time, they didn't ask. They just burned it down with her inside." Sofia's hand flew to her mouth. "Franco, I was 16, at school when it happened. By the time I got there, the firefighters were still pulling bodies out." He stared at his reflection in the rain-streaked glass. "She died believing that integrity mattered more than survival, that being good was worth the cost. And you've spent 15 years proving she was wrong. I've spent 15 years making sure no one could ever put me in that position again." Franco turned to face her. "I became exactly what killed her. The thing that demands payment, that takes what it wants, that doesn't accept no as an answer. Because that's the only language this city understands." Sofia crossed the space between them, her damp dress clinging to her frame, her eyes blazing with something Franco couldn't name. "That's not true, isn't it? Look what happened when I showed mercy. The Vega family smelled weakness and moved in. No, they saw change and got scared. She was close enough now that he could smell rain and coffee and something floral he couldn't place. There's a difference between being weak and being human, Franco. Your mother wasn't wrong for having principles. The world was wrong for punishing her for them. She's still dead. And you're still alive," Sofia's voice cracked. "Still building something. Still choosing every single day who you want to be. That's not weakness. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Thunder cracked so loud the windows shook. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Franco stared at this woman who'd somehow seen past his armor to the frightened 16-year-old still trying to save his mother. "Why do you keep saving people like me?" he asked, echoing her words from weeks ago. Sofia's laugh was soft, sad. "Because someone once saved me, and I refuse to forget what that feels like." The storm raged outside. Inside, something fundamental shifted. "Don't fail me, Franco," Sofia whispered. He reached out slowly, his scarred hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "I'm trying not to." For a moment, just one suspended, perfect moment, they stood there in the lightning-lit library, the empire and the war and the weight of history falling away until there was just this. 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage. Then Franco's phone shattered the silence. Dante's name flashed across the screen. Franco answered without stepping back. "What is it?" "Boss, the Vega family just hit the East Side warehouse. They left another message. Dante's voice was tight, and this time they specifically mentioned Miss Moretti by name. The warmth drained from Franco's eyes, replaced by something cold and lethal. "I'm on my way." He ended the call and looked at Sophia. "You're staying here. Dante's posting guards outside." "No." Sophia's voice was steel. "If they're using my name, then I'm part of this whether you lock me away or not. So stop protecting me and start trusting me." Franco wanted to argue. Wanted to hide her somewhere the war couldn't reach. Instead, he handed her his jacket. "Then let's go show them what happens when they threaten what's mine." As they walked toward the elevator, lightning illuminated the photograph on Franco's desk, his mother, smiling, unaware of the fire that would consume her. But next to it now, barely visible in the stormlight, sat something new. A torn napkin from El Corazón Rojo with Sophia's handwriting. A note she'd left about inventory discrepancies weeks ago. 2 women, 2 kinds of courage, and Franco, caught between the person he'd become and the person he might still be. The storm was just beginning. The East Side warehouse was chaos incarnate when they arrived, smoke billowing from shattered windows, emergency vehicles screaming in the distance, Franco's men forming a perimeter around what was left of the building. But it was the crowd that made Sophia's blood run cold. Civilians, dozens of them spilling out of the adjacent apartments, drawn by the explosion. Families, children. This wasn't just a hit on Franco's operation, it was a spectacle designed to prove the Vega family could strike anywhere, hurt anyone. "Boss, you shouldn't be here," Dante said, intercepting them at the perimeter. This was a setup. They wanted. Gunfire erupted from the rooftop across the street. Everything slowed. Franco's guards returned fire. People screamed. The crowd scattered in every direction except for one small figure frozen in the center of the chaos. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, stood paralyzed beside an overturned market stall, her eyes wide with terror as bodies rushed past her. Sophia didn't think, didn't calculate odds or consider consequences. She just ran. "Sophia!" "No." Franco's voice cut through the noise. But she was already moving, her heels abandoned somewhere behind her as she sprinted across the debris-strewn street. A bullet shattered the pavement inches from her feet. Another pinged off a metal dumpster. Sophia kept running, her focus narrowed to the child's terrified face. She reached the girl and threw herself over the small body just as another volley of gunfire ripped through the air. They hit the ground hard. Sophia's body curled around the child like a shield, her white blouse already staining red from where debris had torn her shoulder. Then Franco was there, appearing like an avenging angel, his body covering both of them, his gun drawn and returning fire with terrifying precision. 3 shots, 3 bodies dropped from the rooftop. "Get them out!" Franco roared to his men. Dante and 2 others formed a human wall as Franco lifted both Sophia and the child, carrying them toward the safety of his armored car. The little girl was crying, clutching Sophia's neck. Sophia was clutching something else when Franco looked down. He saw she'd grabbed a wine glass from the overturned market stall, its stem broken, red wine mixing with blood on her palm. Déjà vu hit him like a physical blow. "I've got you," Franco whispered, the same words he'd spoken in the alley weeks ago. "I've got you both." They made it to the car. Franco settled them in the back seat while Dante drove like hell was chasing them, which, in San Verona, it probably was. The little girl's mother appeared at a safe house 3 blocks away, sobbing in relief, thanking Sophia in rapid Spanish that Sophia barely understood through her own shock. Then it was just Franco and Sophia in the car, speeding back toward his building while medics were called ahead. "You could have died," Franco said, his voice shaking with an emotion Sophia had never heard from him before. Raw, unfiltered terror. "You could have. Why would you?" "There was a child," Sophia interrupted, her voice steady despite the blood. "What was I supposed to do? Let my men handle it. Let anyone else." Franco's hands were shaking as he pressed a clean cloth to her shoulder. "You're not trained for this. I'm exactly what you made me," Sophia said quietly. "Someone who doesn't look away when people need help. Someone who remembers what it feels like to be saved." She met his eyes. "Someone like your mother." Franco's composure shattered. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with desperate gentleness, his face buried in her hair. "Don't do that. Don't compare yourself to." His voice cracked. "I can't lose you too. Do you understand? I can't. You didn't lose me." Sophia's hand, the one still holding the broken wine glass, rose to touch his face. "I'm right here. Still breathing. Still remembering everything." The car pulled into the private garage. Medics waited with a stretcher. But Sophia waved them off, standing on her own despite Franco's protests. "It's just a scratch," she insisted, though blood stained her entire sleeve. "I've had worse from breaking dishes." "Sophia, Franco." She turned to face him fully, this man who'd carried her twice now, who'd somehow become the center of her entire world in the span of 6 weeks. "I know what I signed up for, and I'm not going anywhere." He stared at her, wine-stained again, bloodied again, still impossibly brave, and felt something fundamental break open in his chest. "You're fired," he said hoarsely. Sophia blinked. "What?" "You're fired as my assistant. Effective immediately." Franco stepped closer, his hands framing her face with infinite care. "Because I can't do this anymore. Can't pretend you're just an employee. Can't keep lying to myself about what you've become." "And what have I become?" "Everything," Franco whispered. "Everything I swore I'd never need. Everything I'm terrified to lose." The garage lights hummed. Blood dripped onto concrete. The city burned somewhere above them. And Sophia smiled, small, sad, and absolutely certain. "Then stop firing me, and start trusting that I'm strong enough to stand beside you. Even in war? Especially in war." Franco kissed her forehead, gentle, reverent, a promise he didn't have words for. "The Vega family used your name tonight. They made you a target." "Good," Sophia said fiercely. "Let them know exactly who they're dealing with. Not just your assistant. Not just the waitress you saved." Her eyes blazed. "The woman who stands with Francisco Sanchez and doesn't back down." For the first time since the warehouse, Franco smiled, small, dangerous, and full of something that looked like hope. "Then let's show them what happens when they threaten what's mine. If you can feel your heartbeat right now, it means you still have time to redeem yourself the same way he did. Subscribe before the part of you that still believes in redemption goes quiet." Sophia opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the familiar weight of silk sheets. For a disorienting moment, she thought she'd traveled back in time, back to that first morning when she'd woken in Franco's penthouse, terrified and grateful in equal measure. Then the pain in her shoulder reminded her. This was different. Franco sat in the same leather chair as before, but closer this time. His shirt was stained with her blood. His tie was gone. His usually perfect hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. He wasn't looking at his phone or reviewing reports. He was watching her like she might disappear if he blinked. "You stayed," Sophia whispered, her voice hoarse. "I stayed." Franco's voice was raw, exhausted. "The doctor said the wound wasn't serious, but you lost blood. You were in shock. You—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "You kept apologizing. For the glass. For causing trouble. For bleeding on my car." Sophia's laugh came out as a sob. "That sounds like me." "It shouldn't be." Franco stood, crossing to sit on the edge of the bed. "You threw yourself over a child in the middle of a gang war, and you were apologizing for property damage. Old habits." "No." His hand found hers, careful of the fresh bandages. "Survival instincts from a life where you had to make yourself small to stay safe. But you're not that person anymore, Sophia. You haven't been since the night you refused to forget." Sophia stared at their intertwined hands, his scarred and tattooed, hers small and bandaged, both marked by violence, both still reaching for each other. "I remember everything," she said softly. "The gunfire, the little girl's face, the way you covered us both." Her eyes met his. "The way you called my name like you were terrified." "I was." The admission seemed to cost him everything. "I've faced down rival gangs, survived assassination attempts, built an empire on fear and blood, and none of it has ever terrified me the way seeing you run into that street did." "Franco, let me finish." He shifted closer, his free hand rising to brush hair from her face. "When I found my mother after the fire, I made myself a promise. I would never care about anyone enough to feel that helpless again. I would never give this city the power to hurt me through someone else." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And then you happened." Sophia's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I know what you are to me, Sophia. I've known since the warehouse. Maybe since the library during the storm. Maybe since that first morning when you refused to pretend I was just a monster." Franco's thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I know what I saw the woman who carried me twice. Out of the darkness I'd lived in so long I thought it was home." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "You remembered what I said to you." "I remember everything too." Franco's smile was broken and beautiful. Every word, every look, every moment you chose to stay when any sane person would have run. "I'm not very sane." "No. You're brave. Impossibly, Dangerously brave. He leaned his forehead against hers. And I'm in love with you. Which is the most terrifying thing I've ever admitted. The words hung in the air like a confession, like a surrender. Sophia's hand rose to cup his face, feeling the tension in his jaw, the exhaustion in his bones, the weight of a man who'd carried an empire alone for too long. Then maybe it's time you let someone be terrified with you. The Vega family won't stop. Using your name was just the beginning. They'll come after you specifically now. Target you to get to me. Let them try. Sophia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I didn't survive 3 years of being invisible just to hide now. I didn't refuse to forget your mercy just to run when things get dangerous. This isn't just dangerous, Sophia. This is war. I know. She pulled him closer until their lips were inches apart. And I'm choosing to stand in it. With you. As more than your assistant. As more than the waitress you saved. As what? Franco breathed. As the woman who loves you back. Sophia closed the distance, kissing him with everything she'd been holding back for weeks. All the fear, the hope, the impossible certainty that this broken, dangerous man was somehow exactly who she'd been waiting for. Franco kissed her back like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. Like she was salvation, and he'd finally stopped running from redemption. His hands tangled in her hair, careful of her injury, gentle despite the desperation in every touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the city stretched below them, still burning, still bleeding, still demanding its pound of flesh. We're going to destroy them, Franco said quietly, his forehead still pressed to hers. The Vega family. Everyone who thought targeting you was acceptable. I'm going to dismantle them piece by piece. We're going to destroy them, Sophia corrected. Together. Because I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you wage war for me. Franco pulled back to study her face, flushed, determined, absolutely serious. You're asking to be part of the retaliation. I'm demanding it. He should have said no. Should have locked her in this penthouse and handled it himself the way he'd handled everything for 15 years alone, ruthless, without the complication of caring who got hurt. Instead, Franco kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, a promise and a warning wrapped in one. Then we do this my way. Strategic, precise. No more running into gunfire. Agreed. And Sophia? His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper that made crime lords nervous. When this is over, when the Vega family is nothing but a cautionary tale, you and I are having a very long conversation about what comes next. What comes next? Franco's smile was soft and dangerous, and full of everything he'd never let himself feel before. Everything. A life. A future. All the things I swore didn't exist in my world. He traced her bottom lip with his thumb. All the things you made me believe in again. Sophia's heart swelled and broke and rebuilt itself all at once. You came back again, she whispered, echoing that night in the warehouse. Every time I needed you, you came back. Always, Franco promised. For the rest of my life, Sophia Moretti, I will always come back for you. Outside, San Verona woke to news of the East Side attack, to speculation about the mystery woman who'd saved a child, to whispers that Francisco Sanchez had finally found something more valuable than power. Inside, wrapped in silk and sunlight and each other, two people who'd been saved by the same mercy finally stopped pretending and started planning their war. 3 weeks after the East Side attack, San Verona woke to a new reality. The Vega family's remaining leadership was arrested in a coordinated raid not by Franco's men, but by federal agents armed with evidence of trafficking, corruption, and murder. Evidence that had been meticulously compiled by a certain personal assistant with a talent for finding discrepancies in ledgers. You didn't kill them, Sophia said, watching the news coverage from Franco's penthouse office. No. Franco stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her uninjured shoulder. I gave the evidence to someone who could end them legally, publicly, permanently. That's not how the old Francisco Sanchez would have handled it. The old Francisco Sanchez hadn't met you yet. It had taken 3 weeks of careful planning, dismantling the Vega operations piece by piece, turning their allies against them, building an airtight case that even corrupt officials couldn't ignore. Franco had wanted blood. Sophia had convinced him that destroying their legacy was more devastating than ending their lives. You're getting soft, Dante had said during one of their strategy sessions. No, Franco had replied, his hand finding Sophia's under the table. I'm getting smart. There's a difference. Now, watching the news anchors discuss the fall of one of San Verona's oldest crime families, Sophia felt something shift in her chest. This was justice. Imperfect, Complicated, but real. What happens now? She asked. Franco turned her to face him, his hands framing her face with the gentleness that still surprised her. Now we rebuild. Not just the organization, everything. The way we do business. The way we treat people. The line between power and cruelty. That's a lot of work. Good thing I have an excellent assistant. His smile was soft, genuine. Though I'm thinking of promoting her. To what? Partner. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning. In every sense of the word. Business, life, everything that comes after. Sophia's breath caught. Franco, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I'm asking you to build something with me. Something better than what came before. An empire that doesn't just take, it protects. It lifts up the people like your brother, like that little girl, like everyone this city has chewed up and forgotten. That's not how empires work. Then we'll be the first. Franco's eyes blazed with certainty. I built all this to control the world, Sophia. To make sure I was never powerless again. But you taught me something more important. Control is meaningless if the world isn't worth saving. Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. You sound like your mother. I know. His voice cracked. And for the first time, that doesn't terrify me. That evening, Franco stood on the rooftop of El Corazon Rojo. The city spread below him like a kingdom of light and shadow. Sophia joined him, wrapped in his jacket against the autumn wind. Her shoulder finally healed enough to move without pain. I've been thinking, Franco said, his hand finding hers. About the restaurant. My mother's place. What about it? The lot's been empty for 15 years. I bought it after she died, but I could never figure out what to do with it. He turned to face her. I want to rebuild it. Exactly as it was. A restaurant that serves real food to real people. No front, no laundering. Just honest work. Sophia's heart swelled. Franco, and I want you to run it. If you want. His voice was uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. I know it's not what you signed up for. I know you've built something here, with the organization, but... Yes. Sophia laughed through tears. Yes, I'll run it. On one condition. Anything. We name it after her. Maria's. So everyone knows what happens when you choose integrity over compromise. You become immortal. Franco pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with fierce tenderness. I would burn everything I've built if it meant keeping you safe, he whispered into her hair. I know, Sophia whispered back. But you don't have to, because we're going to build something better, together. They stood there as the sun set over San Verona, the ghost in a tailored suit, and the waitress who refused to forget, both finally free of the prisons they'd built from survival. Below them, in the streets where violence had once been the only language, whispers spread of a different kind. Francisco Sanchez dismantled the Vega family without firing a shot. The woman he carried works beside him now, not behind him. He's opening a restaurant, an honest one. Maybe redemption is possible after all. 6 months later, Maria's opened its doors in the north side. The menu featured recipes Franco barely remembered, reconstructed from memory and love. Sophia greeted customers with the same grace she'd once used to survive. And Franco feared, ruthless, untouchable. Franco stood in the kitchen his mother had died defending, finally understanding what she'd tried to teach him. Some things were worth more than power. Some people were worth more than empires. And sometimes, the bravest thing a monster could do was choose to become human again. Busy night, Sophia said, finding him by the window after closing. The restaurant empty except for the two of them. She would have loved this, Franco said quietly, seeing it full of people, full of life. She would have loved you, Sophia corrected, lacing her fingers through his. The man you became, the man you're still becoming. Franco turned to face her, this woman who'd saved him in every way that mattered. Marry me. Sophia blinked. What? Marry me. He repeated, pulling a simple ring from his pocket, no diamond, just a band of silver with an inscription. I remember everything. Not because it's strategic, not because it protects you, but because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that the waitress who refused to forget made the right choice. Sophia's tears came fast and honest. You're supposed to get on one knee. I'm a crime lord. I don't kneel. But Franco's smile was soft as he dropped to one knee anyway, because for her, he'd break every rule he'd ever made. Sophia Moretti, will you marry the monster you saved? You're not a monster, Sophia whispered, pulling him up to kiss him. You're just a man who finally learned how to feel again. And yes, I'll marry you. as they held each other in the restaurant built from memory and hope, the city lights flickering through the windows like stars. Neither noticed the photograph Franco had mounted on the wall. Maria Sanchez, smiling, forever young, forever proud. Beside it hung another frame, a torn napkin from El Corazon Rojo, wine-stained and precious, with Sofia's handwriting barely visible. Two women who'd believed in integrity. One man who'd finally learned it was worth fighting for. And a love story that proved even in the darkest alleys, someone might come back for you, if you're brave enough to remember. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.